The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lisa Bock-Andersen. I am the Director of Communications and Events at Attico ITS Europe. I am delighted to be your host today. Let me give you a little bit of a background on this webinar series. It is the second webinar in a series that aims to take us on a journey up until the ITS World Congress in Hamburg in October. The webinar series linked to the sixth topic of the ITS World Congress, and the purpose is really to update the community and to keep you engaged and to give you a bit of an appetizer on what is going on in the Congress. So a quick highlight around the Congress itself. Here you see at a glance a day-to-day overview. We're preparing a fantastic program for you starting on the Monday all the way through to Friday. There is a number of elements going on. The Attico City Moonshot is a big project that is very important for us. We are surveying up to 300 cities in terms of their mobility needs, and we hope to be able to share the final report. We will also, of course, have plenaries and slightly more in-depth executive sessions. Something new, we will have two global forums, one on mass, one on freight and logistics via ports, where our host city, Hamburg, plays an important role. To name another element, we will have the ITS World Congress Summit that will bring together around 25 ministers from around the world. And perhaps the last thing I could mention, we will really have a very in-depth startup program this year, spanning 3 of the 5 days. Just a couple of figures. We have had over 900 session and paper proposals, which is fantastic and a bit of a record, even in normal times, and they are translating into around 180 sessions. We also have 45 demonstrations and 20 technical visits that are being prepared, and last but not least, also 4 tours of ITS highlights that will be prepared by the city of Hamburg, our host. So we're very keen to meeting you face to face. Registrations are opening tomorrow, so book your space. Now back to the topic of today. So the broader topic is new services from new technologies, which is one of the 6 Congress topics, as you may know. And of course, as the cloud suggests, there are many topics that one could talk about here: artificial intelligence, you know, blockchain, deep learning, etc. But what we want to focus on today is next generation connectivity. Connectivity will be really important for most of the services, both in terms of physical and digital infrastructure. 5G will be essential, and even 6G, and this is what we will focus on today. Now, if we have a look at the agenda, in a moment I will hand over to Jakob Bangsgaard, our CEO at Attico ITS, to welcome you all. And that will then be followed by 2 keynotes. We're very happy to welcome Mr. Peter Stupman from DG Connect in the Commission. Peter is head of unit Future Connectivity Systems, and we're equally delighted to welcome Mr. Christoph Voigt, who is chairman of 5G AA, short of 5G Automotive Association. This is the first part of the program. Then we will have a second part of the program where my colleague Nico will take over. Nico is the Senior Manager in Ertico ITS Europe for Innovation and Deployment. And Nico will be our moderator throughout the panel. Nico will present the 4 panelists a little bit later in the webinar. So last but not least, before I hand over to Jakob, very shortly, you, the attendees, will be in listen-only mode, but there will be a chance to ask questions. We have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to use the tool, and you're very welcome to ask your question as we move forward in the webinar, and supported, and we look forward to using it through our Ertico. I would now like to hand to Jakob Bangsgaard, our CEO. Jakob, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from my as well to everyone who decided to join in on this second webinar. The networking is so important for us in Ertico to drive the innovation in smart mobility. This is what it's really all about for us, to the togetherness, and this is something that, of course, we all are missing very much at this moment in time, and that's why presenting what is happening towards the ITS Congress in Hamburg is such a big important step for us, and that's why we are so pleased that you decided to join in today. Lisa already mentioned why the topic of today is so important. The connected technologies and services is one of the key drivers in what we call the Internet of Mobility, connecting people, vehicles, goods at any time, anywhere, and that is why we wanted to present to you the state of the art of future technologies in connectivity for you today. And therefore, I really would like to thank the European Commission for joining us. I also want to thank our Ertico partners, our Congress partners. And last but not least, I would like to thank all of you who decided to join in today, and please pose questions to the panelists to raise a discussion. And I hope that you will have the opportunity to join more of our webinars, but otherwise I just want to say that I'm really looking forward to meet you soon again, all of you, and not least to meet you in Hamburg in October. Thank you very much, and back to you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Jakob. Let us move now to our first keynote. I'd like to welcome again Mr. Peter Stupman from the European Commission. Very pleased to have you with us. And you'll talk a little bit about the connectivity in the digital decade. Please, the floor is yours, Peter.
Many thanks, Lisa, and also to Jakob. And dear colleagues, really happy to be with you. It's a big honor to open this webinar. And indeed, we are all looking forward to the Hamburg event. And it's a nice idea to make a bit of a warm up and be together before. So really a pleasure. So indeed, I will give you a bit of policy context to our connectivity ambitions, and especially what it means also for mobility. And I understood that the slides will be shown and moved forward by other colleagues.
Indeed.
Very good. That's great. So we jump into the first slide already. So that was the latest news, let's say. We saw it in April, the digital decade communication. And of course, 5G is fundamental as a basis, as connectivity basis, fiber and 5G. And following the 5G action plan that you know, with the targets 2020, 2025, that of course remain valid, we introduced a new target towards 2030. And the idea is here to have indeed fiber and 5G is fully available wherever it makes sense, wherever it's used. And so we call that populated areas, but we also mean, of course, transport paths, wherever people are gathering, working, living, and traveling. So then, of course, one of the verticals of 5G, and one of the most important ones, of course, is mobility. As you know, 5G is a multi-service platform and will enable a number of critical services for different sectors. And of course, in the context of connected mobility, this will be very important. If we look at trends in the area of automated mobility, broader, not only based on connectivity, we can see 4 major areas. You can group it, of course, differently, but that's one way to present it. Automated driving is one, connectivity, mobility as a service, and clean technologies. And in these different areas, you can, of course, look at the position of Europe in some of, well, first, of course, what is the potential in general, how important it is also in terms of economic activity. There we have, especially, of course, in the clean technologies, many opportunities, but also in automated driving and connectivity, which will then really move, if you see that, from factor 6 around, in some factor 10 even, in terms of growth. And then, of course, it's interesting to see where Europe is standing there, and in some, of course, we're well placed. In others, we have to catch up. Okay, I don't go into the details below, but what is also interesting from a digital perspective, of course, what are the major innovations that we need to make this to be in a good position here? And there, of course, a number. Of course, it's connectivity I will dive into later, but linked to that, we have, of course, the edge computing, so deployment of edge and take up of the ecosystems in that area. We have the operating system. We're quite well placed in the automotive area today, but we're coming to our limits here, and there's new platforms that are developing in cars. And here, of course, we also have to work together in Europe to make sure that we can continue to lead. Of course, batteries is very important, not only the so-called mini innovation just to make it work today, but really have a sustainable capacities in Europe in batteries. And of course, then, this is all on our minds, semiconductors, especially in the moment, the shortage, but of course, also then technology capacities in the future with very advanced technologies that we can play a role here. And this topic, of course, has moved up in the agenda, especially also in the context of COVID-19, think about resilience, but also already before when we talked about sovereignty and autonomy. So this will be, of course, very important. So yeah, the bottom line here, the one back, please, is, of course, that the value, can we go one slide back? Yeah. If you see the value of the car, then you see that it's, of course, in terms of digital, has been increasing a lot, and we're now moving towards more than 50%. So that's why, of course, this is also important. Good. So then, in terms of investment agenda that is in front of us now, you might have been following this discussions on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and we have here identified a number of areas where we see investment opportunities to have really this forward-looking agenda towards green and digital recovery. And there are some areas here where digital is particularly important. One is the connect area, to have really rollout of fiber and 5G. We also have, well, especially in mobility, you might be very interested in recharge and refuel, of course, it's very important. We have modernization, so digitalization of public administrations. Scale up is something really where we want to have this high-end push towards very modern data infrastructures, also in the European ecosystem. And of course, skills is always very important. So these flagships are being considered in the member states, recovery plans, and we, of course, working with them to make the best out of that and have this once in a lifetime opportunity really to move Europe forward in these areas. And one of them is 5G corridors. That's also some of you know. We're working very intensively on that for a number of years already. But of course, it got a bit of a boost now also in the context of the recovery. A number of member states also on top of the CEF program that we're now launching have also foreseen that in their recovery plans. And then, of course, it can, at the end, it goes together towards one European multi-country project. And this is indeed very in line with this vision to have the infrastructures in a pan-European way rolled out throughout this decade. And we're starting basically now with preparation studies ongoing, and very soon have first projects on the ground. We will launch these calls at the beginning of this year, end of this year, with once the work program of the CEF Connecting Europe facility will be adopted. The vision is here to have indeed very high quality 5G along these highways as a first step, of course. At the end, we want to see that on all roads. But first use cases will indeed develop on highways when we look at higher levels of automation. So there we want to make sure that we have a European ecosystem developing here. Okay, let's go on. So yeah, then what is also interesting now, debate around 6G is starting, and we're looking beyond 5G. That doesn't mean that we're ready with 5G, we're just starting to deploy it. But of course, we know that in terms of technology generations, you have to start already more or less 10 years before the new generation. So here, there's a global race that we're seeing already here, with also now US very much more in the game as before in terms of government programs and intervention. We have also, of course, the Asian trading partners that are also launching ambitious programs here. And in Europe, we are also on track. We have already a very important set of projects that have been launched beginning of this year. These are now starting and already working. And we're also launching a new partnership now in the form of a joint undertaking that will really have a strategic roadmap towards 6G with 900 million over 7 years over the financial cycle. And this is an upfront commitment by the Commission that will be matched by the private players in the partnership. And yeah, this one just to see a bit where it started from. So we're starting with these 8 projects with 60 million that are ongoing already. We are then moving towards this partnership, and we have 2 pillars that you see below. The partnership will not only do the research on 6G, but also give coordinated input to the CEF program. And so the deployment pillar is also very important for this partnership. Okay, so that's, I think, the overview. So really keeping in mind now we need investment now into 5G infrastructures and in parallel start the technology roadmap towards 6G. Many thanks.
Many, many thanks, Peter, for this really interesting run through. With no further ado, I would like to hand over to our next keynote, Christoph Voigt from 5GAA, who will talk a little bit about the 5GAA vision for connected mobility. Christoph, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa, and also from my side, a very warm welcome to you all. So at first, I'd like to give you a short idea what 5G Automotive Association is. So the main idea of 5G Automotive Association is that we have a joint industry association between the automotive industry at the one side and the telecommunication industry at the other side. And the reason for that is if we look back in the past, especially in the automotive industry, usually integrated smartphone technology in the car. But as the world evolves towards automated driving, cooperative cars, and so on, it is necessary that the automotive world is now taking part of the standard and taking influence on the standard. And that's the reason why we now have 5GAA. 5GAA evolved over the time. You can see on this page that we are celebrating this year our 5th anniversary. And we started with 8 founding members in 2016. You can see here Audi, BMW, Daimler, Ericsson, Huawei, Intel, Nokia, and Qualcomm, and we grown very fast. So we grown up to now 125 members, and even in a COVID time, we have been able to have the same members, and we also had a quite good time, even in a COVID time, even if it was a little bit more digital. Going to the next page, this is my most favorite page in a 5G AA slides that shows to you the vision and the strategy of 5G AA. So altogether, you can see that we have 8 priority areas, and everything is fitting into a joint city model. And the idea of the city model is to bring all that different traffic partners together, mobility partners together, and to make our world more safe and also more convenient to everybody on the road. And going to that, we are starting at first with digital roads. So the idea behind digital roads is that the roads in the future are digital, and for example, we have a big improvement of the traffic safety. You can see, for example, that if there are some roadworks, it is very easy to inform everybody around that are roadworks on the road, for example, or if we have a situation that there are some emergency cars which should be prioritized on the road. So this is also something how the cars can cooperate with each other in order to make that. And it's not just about cars, it's also about other users on the road, vulnerable road users, so especially pedestrians, cyclists, and so on. And the idea is also here to involve them and their smartphones in order, again, to improve the safety of all partners over the world. And this is necessary also for that we have a precise positioning. Precise positioning means that we are able to somehow centimeter-wise to recognize where the people or the cars are exactly on the road in order to really avoid, for example, critical situations with pedestrians and so on. Going further, what is very important to us, this is the sustainable technology evolution. Yeah, we heard now about 6G. So regarding the cellular V2X technology, you will see we have already cellular V2X on the road. We are now working on the improvements, on new use cases, new ideas within the 5G V2X definition. You can imagine this is an evolution over the years. And for sure, we are now also starting within the 5G AA to speak about 6G. And it's not just necessary that the technology is interoperable, but also the ecosystems are interoperable, or also the cars and the other users are interoperable. And therefore, we are also pushing a lot into the interoperability. And you can also see here, we have seen before corridors, that we also have the chance that the cars from France are speaking with cars from Germany and vice versa. So this is also something which is very important to us. Then a very, very technological stuff is around the flexible service architecture. So the main idea is within a cellular V2X, we have the idea that there are cars speaking directly with each other, or they are speaking with the infrastructure. And on that, it is so important to select the right technology for the right use case. And this is what is around the flexible service architecture. Then going to mobile networks, especially here, the idea is we have already millions of cars on the road, and therefore we have to use the data and we have to use them already. And last but not least, in order to use the data, you can imagine this is so important that the people are trusting us to give us the data. And that's the idea of the security and all around the trust priority area. So this is the priority areas. Let's go to the next page. And behind those priority areas, we also have our 5G AA roadmap, where we believe that the mass deployment will start. And you can see on the left side, you can see different swim lanes around safety or traffic efficiency, and then going to automated driving. And you can see we are starting already with the safety-related issues like local hazard and traffic information. We are going then to the next step in order to improve the sensors and the map data quality and so on, in order to do a lot around safety. And you can also see around the idea of the automated driving that we are currently in the campus stage, where we are trying to learn a lot, to improve the ideas, to improve the use cases. And in the future, we believe in the second part of our decade, we will go here again into use cases where we really can support automated driving with connectivity, because we believe it's very, very important that cars are not just driving automated, but they are cooperating with each other in order to, for example, something like here, dynamic intersection management, to use our infrastructure in a better way, in a more efficient way. So that's the idea of our roadmap. And it's not just a roadmap, it's not just a vision, but it's going reality now. And this is that what you can see on the next slide. And on the next slide, you can see, for example, that there are announcements and there are already products hitting the market. So very important is on the lower left that we have already cars with CV2X launched in China, which is somehow a kind of a lead market for CV2X. Others like BMW are now announcing 5G this year. Ford is announcing CV2X also in the United States next year. Then we have on the right side, we have several use cases where we are trying to improve the traffic situation, like for also to improve the safety, like the idea from Audi with the communication with the school bus, for example. And you can imagine there's a lot of other use cases we are working on. So this is the idea of 5G AA. And I believe if you are not already our member, I believe this is one of the company organizations where it's so important to be now within in order to work together on 5G. And therefore, thank you very much. I wish you a very good time today. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Thank you to both our keynotes. It's really an interesting introduction to the topic, understanding a little bit more about the trends and your vision and the strategy that you're both putting forward. So I think this is an excellent introduction to the second half of this webinar. Nico, I hand over to your capable hands for this next part. Please, Nico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Lisa. Our mobility system is changing rapidly, and mobility is becoming smart through new mobility solutions like CCAM, mobility as a service, and self-organizing logistics, to name but a few. And of course, several emerging technologies or clusters of technologies, such as artificial intelligence, smart sensors, blockchain, Internet of Things, you name it, have fueled this development of smart mobility in multiple ways. But among these enabling technologies, in my view, and that of many others in our technology communities, connectivity is sine non qua, cannot do without, since to implement, and for that matter to realize the maximum benefits, say of CCAM or MaaS that I mentioned previously, one absolutely relies on connectivity technologies to ensure interoperability, compatibility, and continuity of cooperative systems and services. As I often say, connectivity is the new mantra, and in the future, ubiquitous connectivity, anywhere, at all times, between everything, will result in safer connected cars, new intelligent traffic management systems, and ultimately in less congested, smarter cities. So it becomes almost evident that next generation mobility requires next generation connectivity, and I am really delighted to have in this panel 4 distinguished guests, speakers from leading organizations in Asia, in America, and Europe, who will highlight some of the many manifestations of connectivity for transport and mobility, focusing their presentations on applications, infrastructure, enabling technologies, security and standards, and beyond the horizon connectivity technologies, taking the step further on the way beyond 5G and towards 6G. Without further delay, I have the pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Yang Jun Moon. He is a Senior Research Fellow and Chief Director of the Korea Transport Institute of Connected Automated Vehicle Systems at Sejong National Research Complex. He is gonna discuss on digital infrastructure and connected automated driving systems for smart mobility. Dr. Moon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to join this ITS World Congress, the webinar 2 as a panelist on behalf of the Korea Transport Institute and a member of International Program Committee in Asia Pacific region for ITS World Congress. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the webinar host and organizer, in particular the ARICO. My topic today is to discuss next-gen connectivity for next-gen mobility. It is focused on the smart mobility based on digital infrastructure and connected automated driving systems, which is CAS. Why are we talking about the sustainable transport and the sustainable mobility today? This is because we have to be safe and accessible and affordable and environmentally friendly in our transport lives. All we know that the way we do is to reduce congestion, road accident, emissions, and air pollutions, and health problems due to aging society in transportation sectors. How it can be possible? Yes, this is by avoiding the needs to travel by driving alone and shifting to sustainable transport mode and improving efficiency for all transport mode. Next, please. Thanks to the cutting-edge technology in the fourth industrial revolution in the world, we should be able to come up with the ways to resolve these current problems in transport area. That is the next generation ITS, which is called the CITS, cooperative ITS, based on the V2X connectivity, which is focusing the safety, promoting mobility and sustainability. This is kind of the green transport or concept of green ITS. The figure is shown as below as the project developed and deployed in the roadway infrastructure funded by Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, which is MOLIT, in Korea, for providing a service on the open platform utilizing big data from the public sectors. Sejong and Museong City, which is pilot project already done from 2017, and Seoul and Jeju, and Ulsan and Gwangju, and every 2 years, and also the other two cities are selected as in the 2021 in this year are on the process of implementation. Next, please. Now we have to create the concept of digitalization of infrastructure, which is a new challenge of resilient investment for our transport systems, typically from the conventional ITS to CITS based on V2X connectivity, utilizing mobile communications over 4G LTE and 5G and 6G and furthermore. Digital infrastructure not only gives us big data from the vehicles and roadways and peoples when they are moving, and but also provide the background of functional possibility of connected automated driving systems, which is CAS. Next, please. As we know, the CAS are now proceeding in two ways. One is targeting passenger car with a high speed and in the digital designated motorways. For level 3 to be in the market around mid 2020 by the vehicle manufacturers, which is OEM. The other is the targeting public and shared vehicles with low speed in urban mobility for level 4, which is driverless, which is already in the market before year 2020 by small medium enterprise. Next, please. In Korea, the two ways of CAS are now under test and evaluation in the real roadway, including expressway, national road, and urban arterials and city road networks. The V2X functions, including DSRC and WAVE, 4G LTE and 5G provide the CADs with the hyperconnectivity between vehicles, peoples, centers, and roadway infrastructure in order to make a deployment of 15 services defined in the CI test plan by the ministry. Thus, each test and evaluation provider has now a capability of not only gathering the big data, but also analyzing the data as effective as possible to be provided to peoples and public and private sectors, etc., for fostering the CI test services and for enhancing mass business as well. Next, please. The Sejong city has been built up from the last 10 years as the new government capital city with 500,000 population target for year 2030. I'm living in also in Sejong city, and the city has been designated as one of the 2 official smart city challenge project by the government. The city has now the smart mobility deployment plan under the goal of the smart city challenge for carbon-free, humans-oriented city, especially from the transportation sectors, with the basis of electrical automated vehicles and infrastructure digitalization by VDX in order to catch and mass being available around the whole city road networks. This gives a concept of one of the executive session in the upcoming ITES World Congress in Hamburg, which is titled as Implementation of Green ITES, leading by me. Next, please. In order for the smart mobility in the smart city to be implemented, my question becomes all of you, there's 2 issues. One is the infrastructure digitalization with VDX by DSRC and WAVE versus cellular VTX, which is CVTX, utilizing 4G LTE and 5G and 6G and furthermore. And is it dominated or shared? That's my question. Is 5G almost ready to be applied in the real site? Who pays the fund to the VDX infrastructure? Who pays the communication charges? In case, how much it will be? That is my the first issue to be asked to you, and the other is on the implementation of green on eco ITS, how we define the measure of the effectiveness in transportation. The conventionally we still keep the measures as they are. It is your trip safe? Is your trip efficient with respect to time and cost? But now we may be able to have the new measure being adapted. Is your trip green or is your trip eco? In case, are you really willing to change your transport mode from your passenger car every day to public and shared mode in your first and last mile mobility in your life in your cities? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Moon, for your very interesting presentation, also for the open questions you raised at the end. Indeed, the whole presentation carries extra gravity since Korea has been one of the countries leading the deployment charge around the world.
Yeah.
Thank you again, and it's time now to introduce our next speaker, Ralph Willenbrock. Ralph has played an important, pivotal, I would say, role in many projects, such as Autopilot, 5G login-off. So I'm sure he's going to reference this in his presentation. He's product manager in product and portfolio management T-Systems. And he's going to discuss on examples of communication-based use cases and applications. Ralph, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Nikos. Let's directly start with a project called 5G Logistics Innovation, Loginov named. And I'll bring you to Hamburg, which will be the host city of the ITS World Congress this year. And what you see here already from this photo, that Hamburg is a river port, and as a river port 70 kilometers away from the Northern Sea, it was always in the past a front runner for intermodal connectivity, especially to rail, cargo, ship and road. And that's why also 5G has a very key role in deployment for many different aspects of port and logistics hub operation. And that's what I would like to show you based on this project. Next slide, please. We have 3 cities with their ports which will be develop use cases in Living Labs and in Athens and Luca Coppa. The focus is on selecting use cases inside the port and inside the port operation. Here, 5G access points for yard trucks, precise positioning will be showcased, surveillance cameras where you really rely on the 5G network aspects, port and remote automation. And in Hamburg, we decided to focus on the connectivity of the hinterland, logistics connectivity and connectivity of the mobile network, targeting truck and emission data used for dynamic traffic control loops and improved environment traffic management actions, and also having truck platooning and green light optimum speed advices for the platoons inside the city and in the port area. Next slide, please. What are we covering with regards to 5G? In this project, we have precise positioning as very important element. Also, the mobile edge computing server is already for real-time tracking and enhanced visibility in place. We have mission critical applications, and we have aspects of cellular V2X below 25 milliseconds. So we directly go to the low latency aspect of the network. And the smart city aspect is covered as we have ports with their infrastructure connected to the smart city. And this makes the project covering many important 5G aspects. Next slide, please. What is already in place and where we really cooperate closely with the city of Hamburg is a test field for automated and connected driving, with this in the heart of the city shown above. And here, the traffic light and roadside units, they transfer based on standard protocols, the data to a mobile edge computing server of Deutsche Telekom. And this goes as green light optimum speed advice to the drivers. And with this, we cover already one very important latency aspect with our partner Continental in the collision warning service. And the information also is shared in another project for pedestrians and bicycles which approach an intersection because here a lot of accidents happened in the past and have to be avoided in the near future, especially if you imagine more and more public transport and probably platoons passing in such an area the intersections. Okay, with this to the next slide. We did the first platooning test within 5G Loginov Logistics Innovation based on what is ISO standardized in the draft version for carbon footprint monitoring, exactly the group Dr. Moon is heading. So nice to meet you here, Dr. Moon. It's the standard we are already implementing in the algorithms for measuring what's happening in this area with regards to emission savings and carbon footprint monitoring and savings, because it is very important in the near future. And you see two areas to the right. You see the area of the port. The Hamburg Port Authority has 130 kilometers of road network, and the city of Hamburg also has the above infrastructure. And everybody wants to know what is the potential of savings. We know that coordinated traffic lights have a huge potential in passenger cars, up to 50%. Might be different and a little bit less for truck platoons, but we are pretty sure that we can measure and also determine the savings in fuel, CO2, and also in emissions. Next slide, please. And this brings me to another project where electrification and also the measurement of savings by GPS usage and speed profiles is in place, which is Solutions Plus, a huge project across all the world. And the objective and the use cases are targeting electrification of public transport, including taxis. In Hamburg, we have a partner from the taxi side, which is delivering GPS data, which then is handed over for traffic management purposes. But also we have the telecom network with the charging infrastructure, because the telecom network with frequency stabilized currency is very useful for fast charging infrastructure, and this also is studied and studied also for standardization in the other areas. And the last slide, please. This brings me to a project Nikos and myself are involved across Europe in 13 countries. We have here the city in Germany with a already in place bus fleet of autonomous buses level 3. And we will use also here the existing bus operator as partner for studying the cellular V2X aspects, as well as potential data sharing for saving. And all of this is related to new business cases in logistics and mobility, where we believe, mentioned by Peter Stupman before, that here is a huge potential in the near future. And this is the last slide, so I hand over to you again, Nikos.
Dear Ralph, thank you so much for this presentation, and much appreciated, especially your effort to condense a project like so in, let's say, 60 seconds, one of the most emblematic, not to say the most emblematic project in the area this time. So I can see, and I want to welcome our next speaker, a top expert in the area of communications security and cryptography. It's William White, Senior Director, Technical Standards at Qualcomm Newton Center, Massachusetts, United States. William, the floor is yours, and you're going to discuss on horizontal and vertical security requirements enabling ITS deployment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I'm talking about horizontal and vertical coordination of security requirements enabling ITS deployment, and I'm going to do it in 7 minutes. Next slide, please. So Qualcomm is very deeply involved in the automotive ecosystem. As I'm sure most of you are aware, we're involved in providing connectivity and functionality all over the automobile, cloud functionality, cycling functionality via CVTEX, infotainment, cockpit graphics, and AI and machine learning solutions. And so we're keenly aware of all of the different security considerations that are going into automotive engineering right at the moment. Next slide, please. And one thing that's happening, again, we're in a position to observe and hopefully steer, is that right at the moment we're seeing a meeting of different sets of security requirements. There's been work done in specific verticals, so telematics connectivity, VTX, which is what I'm most familiar with, and so on. There's been security work done in those verticals, and there's also regulatory security work going on, driven by UNEC, Working Party 29, and others. And so what I want to do is talk about how those two different trends are coming together at the moment, and how coordinating them is going to be important for enabling future deployments. So looking just at the VTX and giving you a sense of where these requirements are coming from. In VTX, the goal is to allow communication between vehicles and other road users such that receivers can trust the messages they get and the privacy of the senders isn't meaningfully compromised. Those are kind of the two core security goals that we've got. What do we mean by receivers can trust the messages they get? Well, first, we need to know the messages come from a valid sender. And that in turn means that the sender is entitled to send that kind of message. So you can't have an ordinary car sending traffic signal information as if it was a traffic signal. You can't have an ordinary car acting as a police car and sending signal preemption messages. So we have what in security is called role-based access control. So you need to make sure that the sender is entitled to do that, and also that they haven't been compromised or hacked. It's no use knowing that this is a valid police car if it's running bad software, so somebody's able to generate messages to do signal preemption somewhere where the police car itself actually isn't. So we need source authentication, source security, and we need to make sure the messages haven't been altered in transit. And on the other high-level goal regarding privacy of senders, we need to make sure that it's difficult for an attacker to use your transmissions as the cheapest way of tracking you if you have a reasonable expectation of privacy. So there's been lots of work done on various communication security mechanisms to ensure that that data gets from point A to point B securely and that it doesn't compromise your privacy. On this bullet point of the sender hasn't been compromised or hacked, that's where the definitions become important and certification rears its ugly head. Certification is always an inconvenience and expense. So we need to make sure that there's a definition of a secure platform so that you can say my platform's secure, and the definition is not just what security is, but how you, as a third party, potentially establish that that platform is in fact secure. Next slide, please. So in the US, we have this stack of standards. We're really mature around communication security, and we have a certain amount of maturity around this platform security. So down those last two bullets, you can see we've got certification services, but we don't have a formal standard statement of what it means for a VTX box to be secure. Next slide, please. In the EU, things are a bit more mature. There's an initiative led by DG Move that specifies protection profiles, and those, which is a specific way of stating security requirements. Those protection profiles are in the process of being validated and formally adopted. And so at that level, we have a set of requirements in the EU that are likely to be consistent with the requirements in the US, but aren't being formally coordinated. Next slide, please. So meanwhile, from the top down, so there we've seen people looking at, so what are the exact requirements I need for VTX boxes? Meanwhile, the UNEC has noticed, vehicles are becoming more connected, more interactive, and as such, we need to have cybersecurity considerations for them. And ISO 21434 is essentially a threat analysis process that automotive suppliers are going to be asked to follow in signatory countries as of July 2024. And signatory countries include the signatories to the 1958 agreements, the 1997-98 agreements aren't subject to this particular regulation. So, but it does cover the EU, Japan, Australia, Korea, and Russia. Next slide, please. So WP 2979 covers how you are to think about the cybersecurity of your system as you're developing it. Next slide, please. And it references ISO 21434, so this standardizes terminology, risk ratings, development process, and risk management. And so as you go through, so rather than there being a specific set of design features you have to meet, this is a process that you need to follow to talk about your own development process to show that you've taken cybersecurity into consideration appropriately. Next slide, please. So what we're seeing at the moment is this convergence that needs to be managed. From the bottom up, we're seeing kind of specific, almost design specifications that need to be taken into account when you're building your secure systems. From the high level, we're seeing these process specifications, and the challenge going forward is to manage these different security requirements so that the ones that come from the top down and the ones that come from the bottom up are consistent with each other. And the good news is that there are organizations such as 5GAA that are well positioned globally to understand these emerging requirements from the top and the bottom and to provide coordination. So hopefully that leaves us in a situation over the next few years where there's absolute clarity about what's required for security globally, and that will go a long way to reducing not just development risk, but risk by people who trust in these connected services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear William, for giving your views on this very sensitive and important topic of security. And now is the time to introduce our last speaker, Jan Ellsberger, a prerequisite, as we know, for connectivity is robust and interruptible communications, and the 5th generation of mobile networks will meet this need to a large extent when fully deployed, but new high-speed, ultra-precision real-time paradigms will require to look ahead beyond 5G and towards 6G technologies and future communications. And this is going to be the theme of Jan's presentation, 5G and beyond. And a few words about the man himself. He's been in the industry for 30 years, leading industry and standardization activities, and now is with Huawei, responsible for automotive and transportation strategies. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Nikos, and pleasure to be here, and honored to be here as well. I will take you rapidly through sort of the deployment status of 5G and also the technology roadmap from 5G and its evolution towards 6G. So if we look at 5G deployment status as of today, by end of April, 162 operators in 68 countries across the world have launched 5G services. 51% of those operators are in Europe, 19% in Asia, 30% Middle East, 11% Americas, etc. What we notice that the 5G uptake is significantly faster than 4G. We already today have approximately 350 million 5G subscriptions, and we expect this to grow to 3.5 billion subscriptions by 2026. If we look on 5G in relation to cooperative, connected and automated mobility and connected cars, if you look at connected cars as share of new car sales 2020, which was predominantly 4G, 91% of all cars sold in the US were connected. The same amount in Europe was 80%. APAC 51%, and LATAM 37%. And we anticipate that by 2025, 40% of all connected cars sold will be 5G. So I think there is sort of no one disputing in the industry today that 5G will be the technology of choice for CCM across all the use case categories. So in-vehicle infotainment, traffic efficiency, and traffic safety and autonomous driving, and the next generation cooperative ITS systems. So next slide, please. The evolution of 5G is being started to be discussed in 3GPP. So for those of you who don't know, 3GPP is the one and only industry organization developing the technical specifications for cellular systems. 3GPP was formed already in 1998. I was happy to be part of the process. First release was released 99. That was 3G. That has evolved over the years. So 3GPP have developed 4G and is now working on 5G. And release 18 will be what is called 5G Advanced. So that is the stepping stone from 5G towards 6G. The exact scope, technical scope of 5G Advanced is not yet defined. 3GPP is starting discussions and will take decisions during this year on the sort of exact feature content of 5G Advanced. But of relevance for CCM, or Cooperative Connected Automated Mobility, there are some key anticipated enhancements. And I think this was also highlighted a bit in Christoph's opening statement about 5G. Precise positioning will be a key feature. So to be able to provide precise positioning independent of network coverage. So that is an enhancement and improvement. Also carrier aggregation and uplink enhancements to provide increased bandwidth in support of evolved vehicle architectures, where you start to place processing of certain vehicle functions in the cloud instead of on board in the vehicle. Also enable high definition sensor sharing, teleoperated driving, etc. Also a side link or PC5 in high frequency bands to provide improved support for automated valet parking and teleoperated driving. And also improved multicast as part of the MVMS service to be able to support much higher vehicle density, much higher density of vehicles in small geographical areas. So this is a little bit the sort of anticipated scope of 5G Advanced. If we then take the next slide and look at the vision for 6G. So 6G will enter the market approximately 2030 about, plus minus some years. Of course, the exact content of 6G is not yet defined, but looking at the ongoing research and state of the art, you can sort of derive a certain vision of what the companies are working towards. So it's clear that 6G will sort of be a major evolution in the networking technology. And 6G will provide connected intelligence and native AI. So 6G will in principle be a distributed neural network that provides the communication links to fuse the physical, cyber, and biological worlds. In 6G itself, their interface and network designs will leverage AI and machine learning so that you have inbuilt intelligence and can provide customized and automated optimization and automated operations and maintenance of the 6G system itself. The 6G system will also be able to sense by itself, so it will integrate wireless sensing capabilities in the network devices and the consumer devices, etc. So that the 6G will be able to sense and explore the physical world through radio wave transmission, echo, reflection, and scattering technologies. Of course, 6G will also provide enhanced or extreme connectivity. So what is anticipated is terabit per second peak rates, approximately 10 to 100 gigabit per second experience rates, sub-millisecond latency, and a tenfold increase in the density compared to the 5G connection density, and also a centimeter level positioning. 6G will also integrate with non-terrestrial or satellite networks so that you can, in the same network, provide continuous high-quality service anywhere on the Earth. So integration with satellite networks primarily. 6G will also have built-in native trustworthiness, so including new data governance architectures that can support data compliance and data monetization principles. Also for advanced privacy protection and also defense technologies to defend the network against cyber attacks. And also last but not least, sustainability is clearly part of the vision. And the intent is to improve the overall energy efficiency by 100 times across the network. So this gives you a little bit flavor of the technology enhancements from 5G towards 6G. And I'll hand back over to Nikos. I'm looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Jan. we really appreciated your presentation and definitely your 6G vision for 2030. And also I loved the expression extreme connectivity, since connectivity is our main theme today. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our panelists, Dr. Jan Jun Moon, Ralph Willenbrock, William White, and Jan Esberger. Thank you. You spoke intelligently on the potential of the next generation connectivity and what it offers in enabling digital infrastructures, new applications and services, requiring, of course, new security operational modes and demanding in the future even more enhanced connectivity technologies beyond 5G, as Jan mentioned, extreme connectivity. And now back to Lisa to open the Q&A session. Lisa?
Yes, also a big thanks for me, and just to let everybody know that I think most of our speakers, panelists as keynotes will be at the World Congress in Hamburg, so you also have a chance to meet them there in person. Yes, I'd like to open the Q&A now for the last 8-9 minutes, and looking at the questions, I'd like Maxime Flamand from 5GAA to take the floor, so to speak, because the first question is for Maxime. Maxime is the CTO of 5GAA, where we of course heard from the chair earlier in the webinar. So Maxime, we have a question here for you around the demonstration of mobile network-based ITS services. Can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see in Hamburg, and also how you see this differ from the
Not sure I heard the full question. I think the question was around what can be expected at the ITS World Congress from a mobile network point of view. Lisa, we didn't hear the second question. I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I think there was a mix-up in or a lost connection. So the question is, what can we expect to see as a demo of mobile network-based ITS services at the Congress? And also, how would you say that this differs from the CITS demos already announced, please?
Okay, thanks for the question. You're taking me a little bit by surprise here. I think part of the answer was provided by our members during the webinar, Ralph, Jan, and even William. So 5GA itself, as a global industry association, is not organizing any specific demonstrations, but we are coordinating with our members to display and demonstrate different approaches to deliver and deploy CITS services, day one, but also by extensions then also V2X services towards automated driving. And these will include short range and long range connectivity some call it hybrid. In Europe, we call it CV2X. And so 5G supports this cellular V2X, which is like an integrated approach to deliver the hybrid mode. Now, the most important is to deliver interoperability of services at scale, and this is where our members want to show the difference, I would say. So some members want to make sure that all the information that is required for the day one services are also available via the cloud services and via the interfaces. And so what's great then in that case is that you can quickly scale up at the level of a whole city. So instead of covering a few intersections with roadside units, you cover very quickly a whole city. And this is in general supported by 4G and 5G mobile networks. Also some activities related to vulnerable road users. I think Ralph mentioned it. We want to that the bicycles and the pedestrians are included in the safety ecosystem, and that the vehicle can talk to each other. And then from more technical point of view, a couple of our members are showing the role of edge computing. That's perhaps a technical term, but it's a way to guarantee from the mobile network ultra reliable, low latency communication to deliver more and more automated functionalities. And an example is teleoperation of vehicles.
Thank you, Martin. I think we have very little time for all our speakers to answer the questions and accept questions. So thank you so much for your intervention. I will go very fast, and please be prepared to answer fast, okay? Because time is very little now. So first question goes to Dr. Moon, and what is the role that data digital openness have to play in developing digital infrastructures? Dr. Moon?
Yes, the digital infrastructure, is very important for in Korea, which is, we have to upgrade our conventional IT systems to the digital infrastructure concept based on the CITS, the basis utilizing V2X. But as you know, this in Korea, the expressway and national road belongs to the ministry. That's why the ministry has to pay attention to how it can be upgraded to the CITS. But the ministry still have the concept of this CITS in a public site to provide the people with the free of charge to utilizing the information from the CITS based on V2X. That is the reason why the ministry is focused on the DSRC and the WAVE still, right? But the other ministry of the information technology and science, they just provide strongly to the 4G and 5G applications. Okay, so we still have the struggling between the ministry, and then the role of the public sector to provide the basis for the CITS, and then as a private sector from the mobile company and mobile providers, they have to build up 5G something more. But that's what I'm, make the question to all of you that in case of the 5G, who pays the infrastructure, deployment? Is it the role depends on the public sector? It depends on the private sector. In case, how much do you have to pay in the people? How much do you have to pay in the monthly for the communication charge? Okay, from the 3G to 4G.
Dr. Moon,
yes.
You posed it already in your presentation, and I thank you very much. If any of the panelists would like to give an answer to those, because there are big open questions.
Sure.
If not, and they cannot be answered right now, I appreciate your position in my first question, and I will go immediately to William to ask him, does anywhere in the world have a complete certification program to provide assurance that V2X messages are trustworthy and correct? William?
Nowhere has a complete program yet, but everywhere is moving rapidly to develop a complete program. We haven't discussed China in this call, but the Chinese certification program is getting up and running very quickly. Security requirements there. I say Europe is mature but not yet complete, and in America it's more industry-led and government-led, but progress is being made.
Thank you so much, William, and for the answer and for the brevity in it. Thank you. And then a question to my dear friend Ralph. Ralph, is there, what do you see as a key driver for connectivity, 5G, 6G, and in particular in automotive?
Yeah, in my opinion, the key driver is consumer electronics and energy saving for batteries. And I think what we in transport can rely on is that this key driver also will happen in the areas where transport is most taking place, especially in congested area. And given the fact of the sustainability pressure all cities have, also to give an idea to Dr. Moon's question, I seriously believe that emission trading and carbon footprint trading mechanisms can be used similar to bus rapid transportation also for infrastructure investment, because that's a mechanism and I think we will discuss this in Hamburg, Dr. Moon. I really believe Asia and Europe here can work closely together in the future.
Thank you so much, Ralph. And one question for Jan. We know that to support large-scale deployment of CCAM, a digital infrastructure needs to be deployed along the road network, and this requires relatively significant investments. So in your view, how can policy development support share investments across the stakeholders in the digital infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good question.
Security, city authorities, mobile network operators, and so on and so forth.
Sure. So I think this links to Mr. Yang Moon's question as well. So from my point of view, I mean, it has to be shared investment, clearly. So I mean, you have to deploy 5G along the transport infrastructure, not only 5G, of course, but also a digital infrastructure with edge intelligence and also edge cloud services and the environment for that. And that goes across the different stakeholders. So road operators, road authorities, city authorities, mobile network operators, and also edge cloud providers should somehow share that investment cost. And to enable such shared investment models, I think you could maybe take the existing network infrastructure sharing model that we have in place in the mobile network world, where mobile network operators can share investments in the network on the countryside, and sort of try to adopt the same scheme for this type of deployments as well, but now across those different stakeholders. So I think this is what at least from my European Commission point of view, that we should hope to work on. And as Ralph said, we can discuss more about this in Hamburg.
For sure we will. Thank you very much, dear Jan. And I want to thank you all once more for your presentations, your insights. And I would like to go back to Lisa. She will offer the closing remarks for the event. Dear Lisa.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We're 2-3 minutes over time, so I will just thank everybody for your participation, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you, of course, in Hamburg, but I hope also people will join when we have our next webinar coming up in June, on June 17th. Thank you very much to keynotes and panelists, and Nico, my fellow chair here. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.